had to make a decision what to do, and I spent a little bit over 6 years in, and then I got a degree, and then I relocated to Detroit. EDS, Electronic Data Systems, back when Ross Perot was in the environment, and that was a phenomenal experience for me. I sold everything that I couldn't stick in my car, and it was a phenomenal experience, as I mentioned. And within a year, I was laid off. And so I had a seat, this is a guy from Hawaii, by the way, in Detroit, in snow and all of that stuff. So it was a fascinating experience. And I ended up sleeping in my car for about 7 months, simply because I didn't know how to figure this out, right? I was excited, I was enthused about all of this, and it didn't work out like it should. So I determined at that point in time that I would not be in this boat anymore. So I got back into education, training, and coaching, because in the Marine Corps, we learned from top-tier people. And so I knew what education is, I knew what training and coaching was, and so I determined to bring that to the marketplace. Because a lot of places I worked at was, look over my shoulder, okay, you got that? All right, let's meet once a week and we'll discuss it for 5 or 10 minutes. And I was so used to going to a school for a month. So I started a company called Speak Up, Speak Out a year ago, and I've been in training. I've ran several training organizations out there. Now we know some of the competition, some of the issues and challenges right now for business. It's global competition, unlike you've ever seen, unlike I've ever seen, and it will continue. Economic challenges, and there's more. Our education system, my kids are 18 and 20, they got out of the education system in the public school. I see and I've heard and I've watched and I've been participating in the meetings. We haven't changed. Bill Gates went to Congress in 2000 and he said, this is phenomenal for the 1950s, our educational system. We're in 2000, we need to change this. We haven't done anything. My wife is a school teacher. Oops, I'm sorry about that. My wife is a school teacher. I've been in education. My kids are in the educational system, as I mentioned. So it's something that I've had to think about and play with. So I got back into the industry from that perspective right there. So anyways, you see some of these challenges that are happening as we speak. And so let me ask you a question here. What do people like professional athletes, entertainers, musicians, law enforcement, military have in common?
They follow what they love.
Okay, they follow what they love. Excellent. Good. What else?
10,000 hours.
Okay, 10,000 hours. All of them have a strategic training plan. If you look up here and you think about this thing called the military, they have training, 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 unbelievable amount of training. I got to a certain point, they'd send me to school for a month. And if you look at military, not military, but if you look at law enforcement, same thing. Musicians, entertainers. My son just got back from Chicago where they placed second out of the nation. It was a real phenomenal thing in the show choir, glee type of thing. And I can't tell you how many hours they put in working, training, education, training, and coaching. And they have the best there. So right here in Los Alamitos, you have a world-class type of glee environment there. Second out of 100. And they were wholly disappointed because the last 2 years they placed first. But I can't tell you how much training and coaching that all entailed. So one of the things here is that Speak Up, Speak Out was founded on the concept that in the business community, we need to have the same concept. If I were to ask, and not that I would ask, but if I were to ask how many of you have training programs, training plans, written specific that you do on a weekly basis, very few would raise their hands. And I'm not talking about this building, I'm talking about in the city, in the country. Very few would say, yes, I do, outside of the organizations that I talked about there. So Speak Up, Speak Out is an organization committed to helping you compete and collaborate in this economy. And that's my whole purpose, my whole goal and objective. I started this company a year ago. In this economy, I left where I was the top paid person in my specific field out there. And I left to start this because I saw the competition, I see what's happening, I see all the layoffs, I see all kinds of things. So I wanted to be part of the solution. And that's what I am attempting to do here as we play. Now, do me a big favor. On your table right there, you have I handed some of these things out. It's skills. And one of the things, in fact, I have some right there, is skills. It's on this page right over here. And I'm talking about poor, fair, average, good, and elite, and communication skills. Who can tell me what the VVVV means?
I'm not kidding.
Okay, good. It's verbal skills. In other words, what words do you use when you have communication, written communication, meeting skills? What words do you use? Because a word makes a big difference. Vocal skills. How are your vocal skills? In other words, how's your tone come across? Those kinds of things. And then visual skills. Or visual is obviously your body language, your pace, all of those kinds of things. And the last one is virtual. That just happened in the last few years. How's your virtual skills from a communication perspective? So it's the questions I ask over here as I work with clients out there. The number one thing when I interview, I've hired hundreds of people through the years, interviewed thousands, of course, and this thing called adaptable is even more critical in today's age than it was 5-10 years ago. If you're over 35, and most of us are, my question, without asking it, is going to be, can you adapt to the environment? And by the way, I'm never going to ask that question. I'm never going to say, are you adaptable? Because what's the answer?
Sure.
Sure, right? Everybody's going to say yes.
Yeah.
By your actions, by your thoughts, by how you come across on questions and answers and all of that, I will figure out whether you're adaptable enough to be in the environment. So that's a big one. I have people all the time ask me how they get back into the marketplace. So how's your meeting skills, presentation skills, written, all of these things that we're talking about here? How's your analytical skills? How's your critical thinking skills? So it's critical in this environment to really look at this. I won't go through all of this. I'll drop on a couple of these, like what does the word entrepreneurial mean? A lot of entrepreneurs in the room. What does that mean? What does that terminology mean?
And we're all entrepreneurs.
Driven. What's that?
We're all entrepreneurs, we should know.
Okay, good. So give me the answer here, come on.
Self-starter.
Self-starter, okay. So that's a good word for it. You don't have to start a business to be an entrepreneur. You can be an intrapreneur, which is inside of companies, you come up with ideas. In this environment, that's who's being hired. In this environment, those are what companies are. They're always coming up with different ideas. And so being an entrepreneur doesn't mean starting your own business. It means being a self-starter, being creative, all of the above, right? And so you can look at, creativity, computer skills. If you don't type 50 words a minute or above, I'm not going to hire you. Most people won't, simply because that's not quick enough if you're in the office. If you're in the field, that's another story, right? In other words, what this is an assessment for you, for your colleagues, and even for my kids, because they're coming out of high school not being able to work. They're coming out of college not being able to work, and they're good. There's just not enough. There's this many people for this many jobs. So that's not happening like we thought there. I got people who have master's degrees. We got people with PhDs going for entry-level jobs. That's what this economy is. Now, we're going to get out of it, but not with a lot of fight and a lot of challenges there. So anyways, you can look at this list. How's your persuasive skills, planning skills? How's your self-knowledge, right? How do you know, how can you assess yourself to the nth degree from an overall perspective? Sales, we all have to be salespeople, and social media is what we have to be out there. So anyways, those are things to consider and to look at and to play with, because I can't tell you, in fact, let me just give you a scenario here I want you to think about. I want you to imagine that all of you are salespeople, okay? All of you sell for a living. I'm your sales manager, and I said, you know what? None of us hit our numbers this month. Let's go around the room. We're going to start with Penny, go to Arlene, and we're just going to ask the question, why didn't you hit your numbers? All right? So I want you, and by the way, I've been in that situation hundreds of times. Our prices are too high. My proposal didn't cover all the things that you created, by the way. We don't come in enough colors. We don't have the inventory. Our warranty is not big enough, right? And we can keep on going. We'd have 25 reasons by the time we were done. Not one person, now I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking about in my environment, not one person would say, you know what? I didn't have the closing skills to do the deal. You know what? I walked into the meeting 7 minutes late, and I could tell they didn't like that. There were 3 questions I had no clue on the answers. I flubbed my lines. When I was there, I knew it, I practiced it, but I just fell down. Not one person in my experience, hundreds of people, will ever raise their hand and say that. I'm saying that in this economy, we have to. Al Batinga has to say, Al, you're not getting to some of this business because your weight's too much. I have to look at that, right? As harmful, as sad as that is for me, because I would like you to judge me based on what I can do, people are going to do that, right? That's just a fact. So I have to look at myself in the mirror, and so I'm saying to everybody, that's what we have to do in this economy. So those are some of the things that I wanted to bring up here, and that's what I do with clients, with customers, and all of that. Here's some projects that I've worked on and worked with. 2 weeks, supervisor, sorry about that, I should have checked this, my fault there. Programs for SureFlow, they're a manufacturing company. 3-week supervisory program for Unipack, they're a shipping company. program for facilitators at Southern California Edison. So I worked with their group, their facilitation group. I sat down with them. We went through all of the things that they needed and wanted, assessed it, wrote the manual, and then went out and presented for 3 days. Coaching program at Southern California Edison. And Wilbur Curtis are the people who make coffee. And so I worked with them on their writing skills. At New Horizons Computer Learning Center, which Jim is working with now, 300 locations, I wrote the training program for them many, many years ago. And about 1,000 call center employees, not too far from here in Tustin, a big, huge mortgage company, I worked with them. And then I trained the management team at Skechers and many others. Hundreds of employees at Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and many, many, many others, because I've been in the field a long time. It's my passion. Once I got touched by the bug in the military, I started training in the military, and I said, you know what, this is it. This is it for me. I want to help educate, train, and coach people so they can compete and collaborate in the marketplace. So here's some current projects, and the reason I share this with you is to just say, because what we're trying to do is network, right? I want to give you, and I want you to look at me and say, okay, there's a couple of things I could refer, and we've already been doing that, of course. And so I'm working with the federal government on customer service, time management, leadership training. I'm in Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks in August, and I'm working on some other projects with them. And that's a lot of fun for me for all kinds of reasons. I flew to Northern California, took one of my teammates with me last week, 2 weeks ago, and worked with State Farm. And there was 25 agents in the room. They all own their own businesses, and 8 executives from that group. And we did a pilot, and it was very successful, so we're moving forward on LinkedIn. And MS Office for a nonprofit organization, so we're putting that together. They're wanting to know 4-hour, 8-hour, those kinds of things. And then I'm working with a New York firm who has a base in Los Angeles, and they want to know about their call center employees, their supervisors, the facility managers. They've had no training, so I'm doing it from scratch, and I'm working with them from an overall perspective. And to keep in the game right over here, 3 nights a week, me and one of my teammates is working on Word and Excel and critical thinking. I wanted to introduce that to the marketplace because we don't have enough of that. My wonderful 18-year-old son said, I asked him, so what did you take on critical thinking? And he said, oh, we do critical thinking. I said, tell me about the class. He said, we played Stratego and chess for a semester. That was their critical thinking class. Can't compete like that. Now that's good, right? That's good, but you really got to have some more format in there from a critical thinking perspective. So here's what we do. Classes at the Irvine facility, we're about 1.5 miles away from here. I do a lot of on-site. Most of my training is on-site. We do classes, coaching, and consulting in the business community, and then we customize. Okay? Anyways, let's pause for a second. I know it's going 100 miles an hour. Questions?
Yeah, do you have signups for these classes that you're giving at your facility there
Right.
that are open to the public?
Correct. Speakup.ws. Speak Up. It's on the bottom of your paper over there. Speakup.ws.
Speakup.ws?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So we have LinkedIn training and Word training, Excel training, those kinds of things, as well as some business skills. Question, or are you just resting your arm?
No, this is great. I love this. You're very right here. We need to think of ourselves as professional business people, just like athletes think of themselves to make the cut on the team. That's what's happening in today's market.
Right.
So paint me a picture. The classes, is it a week session? What does a day consist of? And
Right now, it's
what's the
just
process?
mixed classes of different skills. So we'll have LinkedIn classes, we'll have Word classes, Excel classes, we'll have communication classes, writing classes. So I'm pretty much a startup. I'm on my 12th month. And so we're still going through all the gyrations of trying to figure this out. But that's what we have on the schedule. When you go to speakup.ws, you'll see some of the classes that we have there.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I work with a lot of insurance agencies and a lot of district offices for insurance. Wondering what that LinkedIn training looks like. Is it a day-long training? Is it?
Right. I have 2 sessions. One's beginning for somebody who's never touched LinkedIn, and then the second half is advanced. It's things like putting YouTube on your LinkedIn. It's things like putting other applications on your LinkedIn and really getting your profile. If you go to my LinkedIn, and I would love for you to connect with me, and you type in business trainer, I will come up as #1. You type in a couple other terminologies like that, I'll pop up as #1, simply because behind the scenes, I've seeded it with keywords. And so that's what we cover in class and make sure that we try to get you up and running there. LinkedIn, by the way, if you're not on LinkedIn, I'm going to recommend that to you. I can't tell you, one of my colleagues just got a big business from LinkedIn. He's actually gone to Asia off of social media without ever meeting the people. So this is the way business is done, right? There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes.
Al and I sat down for, 20 minutes, kind of impromptu before one of the leads meetings, so he wasn't prepared, he didn't look at the website, anything like that. And sometimes trainers, you wonder, those that can't do teach sometimes, which I hate to say, but a lot of times it's true.
Right, that's
People
true.
give the industry a bad name, but within like 20, 30 minutes, Al hit on probably our top 3 major strategic issues that we were working on independently without me bringing them up to Al. He was like, okay, these are the 3 things I'm kind of thinking. So when somebody can dig in that quickly and just get to the heart of the problem, I was impressed, and we're
Good, thank you.
definitely going to do
Good.
some stuff together.
Awesome. All right, any other questions?
Have you done a micro-career webinar yet?
Not yet.
You should.
All right, good. I will jump on that because I enjoyed Scott's. I was on that last week. All of you, and I'm just recommending this, right? So don't take me too seriously. All of us need a training program. So I read a business book a week. I do certain things that very few people do simply because I need to compete. So if I talk to you about customer service, not only have I trained lots and lots of people, but I'm reading the latest, greatest stuff. Because I don't want to go over there and talk about stuff that was 5 years old. So I'm a voracious reader, I'm a voracious YouTube guy, I'm a voracious, all of those kinds of things, simply because in order to compete in the marketplace, you got to do some of these things. See, I remember, like it was yesterday, sleeping in my car. The only benefit I had was I bought a Jimmy from General Motors. Some of you know that's the predecessor to the Suburban, right? So I could stretch out in the back of my car instead of sleeping in a Honda or something like that. That was a cool thing to be able to stretch out, but I never ever want to go back there. So I make sure I train. I make sure my 18 and 20-year-old are being trained. The school system is not doing them justice. And that's what's happening. Irvine is a progressive school, but go to some of the other districts and you will see what they're really doing, and it's not pretty from a competitive perspective. So on PISA scores, we're in the middle. In other words, our high schools used to be up here somewhere, we're down in the middle. So if you look at Singapore, Japan, all kinds of Asian countries out there, they're beating us up and spitting us out. We're in the middle. That's not a good place to be, by the way. That will pay off in not so good ways in the future. And you're already seeing it, right? Microsoft, Bill Gates says, I cannot hire your high school kids. They don't have critical thinking and the math skills I need for them to come to Microsoft. Why is that? It's because we're not challenging them enough. And it's food for thought, and again, just food for thought. All right, let me wrap up here with a quick story. About 6 months ago, one of my colleagues, my daughter's boyfriend, came into my life, okay? And he's a Marine. And he said, I asked him one day, I said, so Louis, in case you don't know who that is. Louis, what are you planning to do when you get out? And he had a baffled look on his face. It was a look of surprise. He says, I'm going to retire from the Marine Corps. What are you talking about? Right? He didn't say those words because, he's trying to get close to my daughter. So it was extremely,
Nothing like
extremely
embarrassing,
polite,
right?
right? And so I said,